For centuries, we've been told a story about the Garden of Eden that paints the serpent as evil, as the great deceiver who brought sin into the world. But according to Edgar Cayce, one of America's most gifted psychics and healers, this story has been completely misunderstood. The serpent wasn't the villain. The serpent was the teacher. Cayce explains that the traditional interpretation of the Garden of Eden story has been used to control humanity for thousands of years. When religious authorities painted the serpent as Satan, they were hiding a sacred truth that could set humanity free. The serpent represented something much more powerful than temptation. It represented awakening. According to Cayce, Eve wasn't deceived when she ate from the tree of knowledge. She was activated. The fruit didn't bring sin into the world. It brought consciousness. The moment Eve tasted that forbidden fruit, her spiritual eyes opened. She could suddenly see reality as it truly was, not as she had been told it should be. This wasn't humanity's fall from grace. This was humanity's rise into awareness. The serpent didn't curse mankind. The serpent gave mankind the gift of spiritual awakening. But those in power couldn't allow this truth to spread, because awakened people are impossible to control. Cayce often spoke about how ancient civilizations understood the true nature of the serpent symbol. In Egypt, the Uraeus serpent was worn on the pharaoh's crown as a symbol of divine power and protection. In India, the Kundalini serpent represented the sacred fire that lies dormant at the base of every person's spine. The Aztecs worshipped Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of wisdom and learning. These cultures didn't see serpents as evil. They saw them as sacred symbols of wisdom, healing, and spiritual power. According to Cayce, this is because they understood what the serpent in Eden really represented. It wasn't a literal snake that tempted Eve. It was a symbol of the spiritual force that exists within every human being. When the Roman Empire spread Christianity throughout the world, they had to suppress these older spiritual traditions. They couldn't allow people to believe they had divine power within themselves, so they took the sacred serpent symbol and turned it into the devil. They took the story of spiritual awakening and turned it into a story of sin and punishment. Cayce explains that this wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate effort to keep humanity spiritually asleep. Because when people awaken to their true spiritual nature, they can no longer be controlled through fear and guilt. One of the most important aspects of Cayce's teachings about the serpent involves what he called the serpent fire that exists within every human body. This corresponds to what Eastern traditions call Kundalini energy. According to Cayce, this is a real, physical force that lies coiled at the base of the spine. When this serpent energy awakens and begins to rise up through the body's energy centers, it brings about a complete change in consciousness. People experience heightened awareness, psychic abilities, and a direct connection to divine wisdom. This is what the serpent in the Garden of Eden was really offering to humanity. Cayce explains that this serpent energy is not dangerous or evil. It's actually the most sacred force in the human body. It's the mechanism through which we can remember our true divine nature. When Jesus spoke of being born again, he was referring to this same awakening of the serpent fire. The physical symptoms of this awakening are often described as a tingling or vibrating sensation at the base of the spine. Some people feel heat or energy moving up their back. Others experience sudden spiritual visions or a deep sense of inner knowing. According to Cayce, these are all signs that the serpent fire is beginning to stir. Cayce frequently pointed out that the Bible is filled with references to this same serpent energy, but they've been disguised as metaphors and symbols. When Moses lifted up the bronze serpent on a pole in the wilderness, and everyone who looked at it was healed, this wasn't just a miracle story. It was a coded description of how spiritual healing works through the serpent force. The staff that Moses carried, which could turn into a serpent, represented this same power. The rod of Aaron that budded and bloomed overnight was another symbol of the life force energy that rises through the spine when properly activated. Even the story of Jacob's ladder, with angels ascending and descending, represents the movement of energy through the body's spiritual centers. According to Cayce, Jesus understood this serpent wisdom perfectly. When he told his disciples to be wise as serpents, he wasn't making a casual comparison. He was instructing them to awaken the serpent power within themselves. The crown of thorns placed on Jesus' head during the crucifixion was placed there because the Romans understood that spiritual power was concentrated in the head, where the serpent energy completes its ascent. Even the symbol of Christianity itself, the cross, represents the same principle. The vertical beam represents the spine, while the horizontal beam represents the awakened consciousness that spreads outward when the serpent fire reaches the head. This is why ancient spiritual traditions often showed their enlightened masters with halos or light emanating from their heads. Cayce explains that the transformation of the serpent from a sacred symbol into an evil one was not accidental. It was part of a systematic effort to prevent humanity from awakening to its true spiritual power. Those who controlled religious institutions understood that awakened people could not be easily manipulated or controlled. When people activate their serpent fire, they no longer need external authorities to tell them what is right or wrong. They develop their own direct connection to divine wisdom. They can heal themselves and others without relying on medical or religious institutions. They become sovereign beings who cannot be ruled through fear. This is why the serpent had to be demonized. If people understood that the serpent represented their own inner divine power, they would stop looking outside themselves for salvation. They would stop giving their power away to churches, governments, and other control systems. According to Cayce, the real original sin wasn't disobedience to God. It was humanity's choice to give up its divine sovereignty and allow itself to be controlled by external authorities. The serpent in the garden wasn't offering temptation, it was offering freedom. When someone successfully awakens their serpent energy, according to Cayce, their entire relationship with reality changes. Time seems to slow down, and they become aware of subtle energies and dimensions that were previously invisible. They begin to remember knowledge that they never learned in this lifetime, accessing what Cayce called the Akashic Records, the cosmic library of all human experience. This awakening doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that requires patience, dedication, and often periods of solitude and meditation. The ancient mystery schools understood this, which is why their initiates went through years of preparation before attempting to awaken the serpent fire. Cayce warns that forcing this awakening prematurely can be dangerous. The serpent energy is extremely powerful, and if the body and mind aren't properly prepared, it can cause physical and psychological problems. This is why traditional spiritual teachers always emphasize the importance of purification and preparation before attempting advanced practices. However, when the awakening happens naturally and gradually, it brings about what Cayce calls a regeneration of the entire being. Old patterns of thought and behavior simply fall away. Chronic illnesses often heal spontaneously. The person develops psychic abilities and can channel healing energy to others. One aspect of Cayce's serpent teachings that is particularly important involves the connection between serpent energy and the divine feminine principle. According to Cayce, the serpent represents what the ancient Greeks called Sophia, divine wisdom in feminine form. This is why it was Eve, the feminine principle, who first received the serpent's gift in the garden. The serpent wasn't tempting her with forbidden knowledge. It was awakening her to the divine wisdom that was already present within her. This wisdom includes intuitive knowing, healing abilities, and the power to create and nurture life. Cayce explains that the suppression of serpent wisdom was connected to the suppression of feminine spiritual power in general. When patriarchal religions took control, they had to eliminate the goddess traditions and the feminine mysteries. The serpent, as a symbol of feminine divine wisdom, became a primary target. This is why Mary Magdalene, who Cayce says was Jesus' closest disciple and understood his serpent teachings, was later portrayed as a repentant prostitute. Her true role as a spiritual teacher had to be hidden because it would have revealed that women could be direct channels for divine wisdom. According to Cayce, there are specific signs that indicate the serpent fire is beginning to stir within someone. These aren't just abstract spiritual experiences, but actual physical and mental changes that can be observed and measured. One of the first signs is often a tingling or buzzing sensation at the base of the spine. This might come and go at first, becoming stronger during meditation or prayer. Some people also experience a sense of heat or energy moving up their back, particularly along the spine. Mental signs include sudden flashes of intuitive knowing, prophetic dreams, and the ability to sense other people's emotions or health conditions. Many people report feeling a strong urge to change their life direction, leaving behind careers or relationships that no longer serve their spiritual growth. Cayce also mentions that people undergoing serpent awakening often become more sensitive to their environment. They might find that they can no longer tolerate certain foods, chemicals, or negative emotional atmospheres. This increased sensitivity is actually a sign that their spiritual senses are becoming more acute. Physical healing often accompanies serpent awakening. Chronic conditions that doctors couldn't cure sometimes resolve spontaneously. This happens because the serpent energy is fundamentally a healing force that can repair damage at the cellular level. According to Cayce, the same forces that demonized the serpent in ancient times continue to suppress this knowledge today. Modern medicine dismisses Kundalini awakening as a psychological disorder. Mainstream religions continue to teach that spiritual power comes only through their institutions. Educational systems avoid teaching about the body's energy systems or the reality of psychic phenomena. Cayce explains that this suppression is maintained because awakened human beings represent a threat to existing power structures. People who can heal themselves don't need expensive medical treatments. People who can access divine wisdom directly don't need religious intermediaries. People who understand their true spiritual nature can't be manipulated through fear-based propaganda. However, Cayce also predicted that humanity would eventually rediscover its serpent wisdom. He saw the current time period as one of spiritual awakening on a global scale. More and more people are beginning to experience spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, often without understanding what is happening to them. This is why ancient serpent wisdom is being brought back into the light. The time has come for humanity to reclaim its spiritual sovereignty and remember what the serpent in the garden really offered. Not sin and punishment, but consciousness and freedom. One of the most beautiful aspects of Cayce's serpent teachings involves the serpent's role as a healer and teacher. The medical symbol of two serpents wrapped around a staff, called the caduceus, actually represents the balanced awakening of serpent energy through the body's spiritual centers. Cayce explains that when the serpent fire rises properly through the spine, it activates and balances all of the body's energy centers. This creates a state of perfect health and spiritual harmony. The person becomes a natural healer, able to channel healing energy to others simply through their presence. This is why so many ancient healing traditions included serpent symbolism. The Greek god of healing, Asclepios, was always shown with a serpent-wrapped staff. Egyptian healers wore serpent amulets and invoked serpent deities in their healing rituals. Native American medicine people often received their healing power through visions involving serpent spirits. According to Cayce, Jesus was a master of serpent energy, which is how he was able to perform miraculous healings. When he said that his disciples would do greater works than he did, he was referring to their ability to awaken and master their own serpent fire. Cayce provides specific guidance for those who feel called to awaken their serpent energy. The first and most important step is purification, both physical and mental. This involves eating clean foods, avoiding toxic substances, and clearing the mind of negative thoughts and emotions. Regular meditation is essential, but Cayce warns against forcing any particular experience. The serpent awakening must happen naturally, in its own timing. Attempting to rush the process through extreme practices or artificial stimulants can be dangerous and counterproductive. Prayer and devotional practices help create the proper spiritual attitude for serpent awakening. The person must approach this energy with respect and humility, understanding that they are connecting with a sacred force that is much greater than their individual self. Service to others is also crucial. The serpent energy is not meant to be hoarded for personal power, but shared for the healing and awakening of all humanity. Those who attempt to use serpent energy for selfish purposes often find that it withdraws from them entirely. According to Cayce, humanity is entering a new age where serpent wisdom will once again be openly taught and practiced. The old systems of control through fear and ignorance are breaking down, and people are awakening to their true spiritual nature. This doesn't mean that everyone will experience a dramatic Kundalini awakening. For many people, the return of serpent wisdom will be more gentle and gradual. They may simply find themselves becoming more intuitive, more compassionate, and more aware of the spiritual dimensions of life. Cayce predicts that new healing methods based on serpent energy will be developed. Scientists will eventually discover and measure the bioelectric currents that spiritual traditions have always known about. Medical treatment will incorporate energy healing alongside conventional therapies. Educational systems will begin teaching about the body's energy centers and the reality of psychic phenomena. Children who are born with natural serpent energy activation will be recognized and properly guided instead of being medicated or labeled as disturbed. The time has come, according to Edgar Cayce, for humanity to reclaim the sacred serpent that was stolen from us thousands of years ago. The serpent in the Garden of Eden was never our enemy. It was our liberator, our teacher, and our guide to spiritual freedom. When we understand this truth, we can begin to heal the ancient wound that has separated us from our divine nature. We can stop looking outside ourselves for salvation and begin to awaken the sacred fire that lies coiled within our own spine. The serpent's message is simple. You are not a fallen being in need of redemption. You are a divine being temporarily forgetting your true nature. The paradise you seek is not somewhere else. It exists within you, waiting to be activated by the serpent's sacred fire. This is the real meaning of the Garden of Eden story. It's not a tale of humanity's fall from grace. It's a coded instruction manual for humanity's return to its divine heritage. The serpent was never the tempter. The serpent was the awakener, calling us back to our true spiritual home. As more people awaken to this truth, the old systems of control will lose their power. Humanity will remember its serpent wisdom and step into the new age of consciousness that Edgar Cayce foresaw. The garden was never lost. It was only hidden, waiting for us to remember the serpent's true gift. The choice is before us now, just as it was before Eve so long ago. We can continue to fear the serpent and remain spiritually asleep, or we can listen to its ancient wisdom and awaken to our true divine nature. The serpent has been waiting patiently all these centuries for humanity to be ready for its gift. That time is now.